Interpersonal Entrainment on in-group, out-group bonding, and social identity.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. I'm all the way here from Southern California, so I've decided time is a construct that I'm not paying attention to. So I'm really happy to be here. So we all know a lot about entrainment. So interpersonal entrainment defined as joint synchronized action, typically multiple co-actors coordinating together to a common rhythm. Again, woven throughout society in many different facets and ways, and again, theorized to create and maintain common group mentality, this sense of social glue that ties people together. We also can see ways in which interpersonal entrainment can be used as a system of credible signaling between people of different groups, either to establish coordination or hostility or competition in some way. So this lovely paper by Cross and colleagues looked at a couple different major theories of the evolutionary benefits of IPE and group formation in particular. So comparing these two theories, one is the social bonding explanation, which is on the left. And it suggests that IPE causes group formation through the increase in affiliation or overlap amongst co-actors. And this is in contrast to their second theory, which is the social identity explanation, which suggests that IPE causes changes in sociality due to individuals actually recategorizing themselves into a more interdependent identity rather than an independent one. Let's see why this is happening. Yeah, I think we're good now. Okay, so this brought up a question for me, right? Is it possible to use interpersonal entrainment? I specifically used a drumming task to change people's individual identities and pro-social behavior between people from different groups, right? So we have a lot of research that's looked at the way in which entrainment pulls people together who are already part of the same group, but there's a little bit less out there about bringing people together and bridging divides between different groups. And more importantly to me is, if this is something that we can do, can we actually utilize it as a means of improving prosociality between people from different groups? So this study aims to assess that relationship between group identity and interpersonal entrainment to determine the efficacy of it, to actually reduce divides and improve prosociality. And in addition, I also had the question of, does the accuracy, how good someone is at entraining, have any impact on your rhythmic skill, right? Does the rhythmic skill with your partner actually matter, right? Or is it just that you're having a shared musical experience together? So I did this with young adults aged 18 to 35. All of them who participated in my study could not have any sort of prior relationship with one another, so there couldn't be any sort of influence of prior group participation. Sorry, guys. Let's see if I can pull this back up. I think it's just the connection. I'm going to try a different port. One moment, please.
That's your adapter, or is this ours?
This is yours.
Okay.
Okay, that's alive again, so let's try this.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Part of the fun of live presenting. I think we're back in business. Okay, great. So again, young adults couldn't have a prior relationship with one another, and we had a total of 106 in the end who participated, and they were placed into two different conditions. So I'm going to walk you through the design of this a little bit. So everyone came in, they were grouped into groups of four for this study. And immediately upon arrival, all participants took part in an aesthetics test. So this was actually a minimal grouping paradigm, but they didn't know this at the time. So they were all given sets of paintings, and they had to list their preferences of the types of paintings that they preferred, and then they were put into groups, and they were told that it was because of having shared artistic aesthetic preferences with the other individuals. In reality, they'd been previously randomized unbeknownst to them. into their different groups. They then were given 10 minutes to get to know each other. They formed a group name as well as a group mascot, and they wrote these down and drew them and wore them for the duration of the study, and were also referred to each other, so maybe Team Tiger versus Team Shark, for example. So after they had this initial bonding experience with their in-group member, everyone took part in a set of independent questionnaires as well as a public goods game. So in these questionnaires, they assessed their initial sense of bonding with their group members as well as with their out-group members. Oh my goodness, I'm so cursed. No, I'm like not touching it at all. It's okay.
We can also, worst case, we can pull it up on the other computer, and if you really want to do the switching.
I have no idea what's better. Ooh.
Have your
Oh, my.
Okay.
I'm not even attached to it right now. It's just doing that.
Can you email me the?
I'm not attached to the internet, so that's going to be a little bit challenging. We can try.
What's this?
We can try that.
Put that in there, or like just put it in your laptop. Oh, you don't have a thing.
But I bet we can make an adaptation.
This is your.
This one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's try this one. Maybe let's try that. Sorry, everybody.
Not your fault at all.
We even tested it, and it was so happy before. Allow.
Oh, that's the fastest PC. Why is it not even showing that?
Yeah, it's really.
Oh, it's also.
It seems like it kept giving out.
HTML is working now. We're good.
Okay. Attempt number 3. Okay, so they did many questionnaires that looked at entitativity, group affiliation, perception of their identity within their newly formed groups, as well as an assessment of their own empathy. And then they also did a public goods gambling game. So in the gambling game, they were given tokens that they could either choose to keep for themselves, give to their group member, or give to a community pot that would go to everyone who was in the study at that moment. And so individuals who hold on to their tokens or who share them within their group are thought to show more in-group benefits and preferences, whereas if you contribute to the communal pot, that indicates a more community benefits toward out-group members and in-group members together. So after they did this, they actually took part in the entrainment intervention. And there were 2 possible conditions. So half of the participants were placed into entrainment where they drummed with their own partner from their same group member that they'd already been paired with, or they were put into an between group condition where they drummed with an external member, so the opposite group. So let's talk about what the actual entrainment intervention was. So I decided to use drumming, the reason being it is much more accessible. It's very easy music activity if you don't have any sort of previous musical skill. You have the ability to typically be able to grab onto a beat. And then participants also played along with their partner during this to a series of pre-recorded drum beats. We had like 4 or 5, I think it was 5 different conditions that they could drum along with. So let's just, for demonstration purposes, so let's do this one of the simple ones first. So everyone get your hands. You don't have drums, but you have hands, right? So everyone drum, clap along with me. Nice. Okay, let's do one of the more complicated ones, okay? All right, wonderful. You could all be in my study. Okay, so these were the beats that they all did with each other. We recorded this with microphones using these little drum setup, and that would allow us to also determine the entrainment accuracy of how in sync they were with their partner during this entrainment measure. So following the drumming session, they took those same questionnaires and also played that same public goods game again, so we could see the impact the entrainment had on the relationship with their partner and with the outgroup members. So this was assessed. We used a multi-level model. We used fixed effects of time and condition, as well as the time and condition interaction, and then random effects of session, ID, right, because there were different sessions that took place over multiple weeks. And then we looked at the co-varying effects of entrainment accuracy. So we split that into easy versus hard entrainment accuracy to the beats, as well as their own empathy and maybe previous music training that could have an impact on their skill level. Important thing to note, we did check to be sure that the minimal groupings worked. So everyone did feel more bonded to their in-group member after the initial minimal grouping. So that meant that we had a difference between in-group preference and out-group preference at the start. So I'm going to show you a few different graphs. We're going to be pretty quick. But on all of these, condition is on the x-axis. And then the dependent variable is on the y, and then the blue is before they entrained, and orange is after they entrained. So first things first, there was no impact of entrainment on in-group bonding, so both conditions within and between didn't really cause a difference in how bonded they felt with each other, but we did see an impact on out-group bonding for the between condition, so individuals who drummed with an out-group member felt closer to that person than they did before they drummed. We also saw an impact in terms of connectedness. So drumming with your in-group member makes you feel more connected with them. Same with drumming with an out-group member. So this effect of having this shared drumming experience, everyone felt more connected with their drumming partner. This was also true for affiliation, as well as entitativity. So groupiness, if anyone is unfamiliar with that term. So we saw this similar effect. Everyone who drummed with the other person felt closer to that person they drummed with. In terms of self-construal, this was like the identity measure. So we don't see an impact of self-construal with the in-group, but we do with the out-group. So people who drummed with an out-group member suddenly had this greater sense of interdependence with that out-group member person as opposed to feeling like an independent individual. And then in terms of the public goods game, people, I'll remind you, you could either contribute to your own personal account, a group account with your group member, or a communal account. And no one really changed the amount they put into their personal or their group account, but we did see an impact of the amount of money put into the communal account. So when individuals drummed with an external member, they gave more money to that community pot. And then when they only drummed with their internal member, they gave less to the community pot. So something suggesting there that there is some level of impact that is occurring. And then two other things, one other major thing to note is that empathetic concern has an impact on prosociality toward outgroup members. So if someone is naturally more empathetic, there is a greater likelihood that they are going to feel a stronger bond with the outgroup members after they drum. So just to summarize, drumming with an outgroup member does have positive impacts on social bonding. It improves cooperation, and we don't see the same impacts on in-group pairs on that between condition. In addition, the drumming with outgroup members seems to shift personal identity toward this interdependence perspective rather than just an independent one. This could be because the in-group members already reached that sense of interdependence from that minimal grouping that occurred earlier. And then the results also suggest that the prosociality seems to improve with the individual that you perform drumming with, regardless if it's someone from your in-group, someone from your out-group, your prosociality improves overall. Finally, the accuracy of entrainment to one's partner doesn't really seem to have an effect. We looked at it with all of the different conditions, and it seems to matter more that you're having the shared musical experience rather than how skilled you are at being in sync with your partner. So that's something to further parse through. We also thought about maybe adding some additional challenging elements for the drumming conditions. But overall, the findings suggest that, this could be used as a means of changing social identity and prosociality to reduce divides. And just a couple limitations very quickly. This was done with minimal groups, right? So I would really love to do this in more socially relevant groups, either with people from different races, religions, socioeconomic statuses, something that actually has a little bit more social weight. I would also want to do this comparison maybe with a drumming out of sync or a simple like drumming improvisation system, and or some sort of non-musical collaborative task to see, is it just the shared experience that's having this impact? And then another step that we're hoping to take is looking at mobile EEG with drummers. So if anyone here has ever done any hyperscanning, I would love to talk to you because I know nothing about it, and that's one of our next steps. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the get-go? And if not, I was wondering more about the, what kind of variability do you see in actual performance of entrainment? Because you said there was no influence, so were everybody really, really good at this?
Yeah, so good question. So I mentioned that we had a couple of conditions. We had like more of that simple, keeping a steady beat versus some more syncopated patterns. So we split those into like hard entrainment versus easy entrainment. We didn't see any ceiling effects. Overall, the steady beats had higher entrainment. I think it was 0.82 or something, close to in terms of their statistic accuracy with each other, but then we had as low as like 0.5. So there was pretty significant variability.
What is that number actually?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we utilized circular statistics to determine how close or far away they were from their partner in terms of their synchrony, and so perfect would be 1.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had a pretty wide range of variability. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
yeah.
Since you're entertaining other tasks, what do you think would happen if you had a task that involved some kind of competition as well?
Yeah, I thought about this. I don't know. So I know there was a study that was done using fraternities and singing. I don't know if anyone's read this one, but there was a researcher who had fraternities either sing in competition or coordination with each other. And I believe they did find that when they were asked to compete, there was actually a greater disparity between the fraternities versus when they sang in coordination with each other. I don't know if the purpose, like if that intention behind it matters or not. I would guess that if you were asked to compete with someone, then that could increase divides rather than reduce.
And rather, I was thinking more that to be cooperating with someone in a competitive context where their performance matters differently and you can win or lose together, that brings another element to this that maybe too complex.
Right, so you're saying like possibly having the pairs like compete to be the best. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's a nice idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering, for the pre-post effect that you're seeing, how much do you think is due to the rhythmic task, or if you thought about like trying a different type of task that's non-rhythmic? Like if it's just the shared experience or the shared musical experience?
Right, that is one of the reasons why I want to add some tasks that are not entrainment-based, right? So, because right now I don't have a condition that is not rhythmic. So that's why I want to add a non-rhythmic one to see if we can determine that. Right now I just don't know. Yeah, so that's in the pipeline hopefully this fall. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, one final question from John.
So in the group composition, it sounds like you created empathy within groups, but you didn't really control any relationship across groups. Like I just wanted to clarify that. Was there any, this was kind of like within versus neutral, or did you create any kind of like antipathy between groups to start with?
So suggesting like when they formed their initial minimal groups, that created an empathetic bond between or within.
I'm saying it's that you talked about creating the bond within the group, but you didn't really talk about whether you manipulated the across group connections.
No, we didn't manipulate the across group.
Yeah.
Typically, I think in minimal group paradigms, you only focus on establishing that within group bound, but that would be an interesting thing to try.
To maybe emphasize, exaggerate.
Yeah, to exaggerate the distance. Yeah, that could be very interesting, the sense of exaggerating between the two. Thanks.
You also just got some questions on the group chat,
on the
YouTube chat. So I'll ask Rainer Polak's question, which is great study. Question: while predefined group identity certainly is a very relevant factor, groups in real life are defined by not only by identity but also by increased in-group interaction. Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, so I think if I were to do more socially relevant groups, I would need to take into account how long people have known each other, the amount of time that they've known each other for, the amount of time they spend with one another. So those are all things that I think would have to be factored into any sort of analysis in this way. So definitely, this is why I started with minimal groups, because this was a simpler paradigm just to see, is this even possible from a minimal group perspective? And so yes, once moving into socially relevant, yeah.
And you managed to answer Ernesta Moore's question also on the group identity. It was minimal group formation.
Yeah,
So you
minimal
can,
group formation.
I'm sure email Ellen your questions if
Yeah.
you have further ones. Thank you
It's
so
just
much,
my
Ellen.
last name.
Another
Thank you.
round of applause.
Sorry for everyone.